Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this special online event, and I appreciate that you're able to join me today. My name is Chambers, and today I'll be taking you through how to fully produce and mix a song in FL Studio 20. So, for this video, we're going to be specifically focusing on a genre of music known as drill. So when you're making this music, you typically want to have a dark piano with a bunch of cool gross beat effects, 808 slides, and hard-hitting drums. But don't worry, today I'm going to show you how to do all of those things with the stock plugins that come included in FL Studio. For the first part, I'm going to take you through how you can make the dark piano melodies, how to do the 808s, the kicks, the snares, the hi-hats, and how to get that perfect bounce sound that you want to have when you're making drill music. Then after that, I'll show you how you can mix the beat to perfection. We'll go over equalization, dynamics, stereo imaging, panning, leveling, all of that and much more included in this video. So join me as we explore the creation of making a drill beat in FL Studio 20. So for me, I always like to start out with my chords and my melodies first and then move on to the drums. So let's get the stock plugin in FL Studio. What you want to do is open up the browser, which can be accessed by hitting this button right here. Then you want to go into packs. Scroll down, go to instruments, go to keyboard, and then you have all of these different piano options for you that come with FL Studio stock plugins. I think the best for making drill music is the close grand, so what you want to do is right click it and hit open in new channel. So as you can see right here, it says close grand. We click on it. And now we have a great piano sound. Moving on, I'm going to go into the piano roll of FL Studio. This is where you can draw in all of your melodies and chords as MIDI, or if you'd like to record it through a MIDI controller, you can do that as well. But for today, I'm going to click in the melody. So let's lower the velocity to make it a softer sound. In drill music, the BPM is usually around 130 to 140, so let's do 135. I'm going to start to move the notes around to change the way it's played. And we can create some tension by making it a half step, meaning we're only going up or down one semitone. So I'll put a note right there. Now it's nice and dark sounding. Awesome. All right, let's have that continue. So what I can do is highlight it and hold shift and drag it, and we can just duplicate it like that. Another way to do this is by highlighting it and hitting Control B, and you can duplicate it as many times as you'd like. Let's move it over again. This time, let's change it up. I'll move that up to an F. So there's our basic pattern for the melody. So now that we have this, let's add a melody in a higher section. And here's a secret trick that I love to do. So let's highlight the main melody that we had. Now you want to hold shift and let's drag it over. Just like that. So right now it's overlapping. Let's put it up an octave by hitting Control and the up arrow. So it's still overlapping with the other melody that we made. So let's bring it up one more octave. And then I want to cut off the excess so we're not going over the two bars. So it will sound like this. So that's the raw piano sound. But now to make it drill, it's one of my favorite parts is when we run it through gross beat. And gross beat is known for so many incredible effects from FL Studio. For example, if you've heard of halftime, so I can open that up. And what I want to do is click on presets and go into momentary. Then you want to click on half speed. Now it's sounding like a drill melody. So I made this 4 bars long. Let's do it one more time, make it 8 bars. let's put this into the playlist. And in here, you can move around your chords or your melodies, your drums, bass, effects, automation, whatever it is, to put your beat in order. So as you can see, we have 8 bars right here. For the first bars, we're going to leave it as is. But for the next 4 bars right here, we're going to add another halftime on it, just to make it more interesting and add variation. So let's go to gross beat, go to momentary, and add half speed. But we're not going to leave it like that because that's obviously too low. So let's pick it up another octave. So let's hear it now with 2 halftimes on it. Awesome. So in order to add that second layer of halftime, we need to create an automation clip to bypass the second gross beat. What you can do is right click on this green light right here and hit create automation clip. That will create an automation clip in the playlist area. And from there, we can draw in how we want it to work. So for the first 4 bars, we don't want it to work at all. Nothing's on. The plugin is bypassed. For the second 4 bars, now I turned it on. So let's listen to the difference. So it's on right now and then comes off. And that's how you can use automation in FL Studio. So there we go. There's our piano part. Now let's move on to the drums. We're going to start out with the 808. I like to go into the pattern where my melodies are, select the 808, and just follow that root note, which is C. An important part of drill music is controlling when the 808 starts and stops. By opening up the 808, going into the envelope tab, and here we can control the attack, the hold, the decay, sustain, and release. So in this case, I put everything down except the hold. This will allow you to hold the 808 for as long as you want. For example, as soon as I let go of that note, the 808 stops. There's no release to it. So to make a slide, let's choose a note that's higher up, add a note under it, double click on the higher note, and you want to click on this icon right here to turn on the slide. It says slide to G5 and hit accept. We can shorten the note. I like to bring the 808 up an octave just to hear it better. Let's copy that pattern over. This time we'll change it up. Add a slide note right here. Now let's really go crazy with it for the end. Slides everywhere. And even if you want to slide down, like from the G to the C, you can do that too. So all together, here's our 808 pattern. So to take this pattern out of the piano, I'm going to hit Control A to highlight it, Control C to copy, Control X to cut, add a new pattern, and hit Control V to paste. Let's bring that into the playlist. Moving on, let's add the snares. So for drill, they have very unique snare patterns. So normally you put the snare here, and it sounds like this. But for drill, most times you put the snare over, and it's over here. Let's duplicate pattern 3 and put it over here. For pattern 4, duplicate that, bring it over. This time, I'm going to click on it and hit Make Unique. Now we can change it up. And for the last pattern of snares, it's going to be different. This time, we're going to put it here and here. Moving on, let's add our second snare in. This is where you can really create the bounce and drill beat. And you can see how easy it is to program your drums right here in the channel rack. Duplicate that over. Let's make this unique and change it up. Duplicate pattern 6 once again, and then we'll add pattern 7. And this time, let's add a snare roll. So make it unique. Let's go into the piano roll here. I can adjust the grid by clicking on the green icon. Let's go into half step, and now the grid got smaller. Maybe we'll go even smaller into 1/3 grid. Hit Control Q to quantize the notes. Let's move this over. Alright, sounds good. So we're not just going to leave it at that, because in drill music, the dynamics of the drums are very important. So go into the snare. Now we're going to mess around with the velocities of the snare. You can access velocity, panning, release, the cutoff frequency, and so many other parameters in this menu down here. Let's start with velocity. When I bring the velocity lower, the snare is going down in volume. So instead of having each snare hit at the same velocity, it's like a robot plays it. So why not change up the velocity and make it more bouncy? Make it very unpredictable. Do the same thing for the next pattern. Then we really want to focus on the snare roll. Let's have that drop down. And also we can pan it out. So when we use the panning option, you can hear it go from left to right ear very quickly. And that's a great trick to make your beats more interesting, and it also adds width to your sound. Next up, we have the hi-hats. Hi-hat placement is key in drill music. We'll start out with a closed hi-hat. FL Studio has a great option where you can right-click on the hi-hat and hit fill each 2 steps. And you can get the hi-hats in very quickly. But for drill music, you have to be more selective about it. Let's start out by following the pattern that the snare has. Clone that, make it unique. Let's change it up. Duplicate that over. Now it's time to change up the velocity for the hi-hats. And if you don't want to do it manually every time, you can hit Alt-R, and this will randomize the velocity for you. So let's do that, change it up, and then we can tweak it from there. So that's the basics of the hi-hats. Now let's really go in and add hi-hat rolls to make it more detailed. I'm going to change the grid to half step. Grab the paintbrush tool, and this will allow you to just draw in the notes like that, which is perfect for creating hi-hat rolls. Let's add one right here. Drop the velocity way down. Very subtle. And what we can do is mess around with the notes. So if we want it to go lower, we can do that. That's a really cool effect. Let's also mess around with the panning. Go to the next pattern. Let's add some in here. This time I'll change the grid to 1/6 beat. Mess around with the panning. Up the velocity. Let's have it go down a few notes. Then for the end, let's go really fast with 1/3 step. Raise the velocity here. Let's go up this time. Then from here, we'll drop it down really quickly. And also bring some of the notes down. So here's some contrast because we're going up in note value and up in velocity here. Then we go down in note value and down in velocity. And one more time, let's get crazy with the panning. Awesome. Next, let's add the open hi-hat. I'm going to put the open hi-hat on the downbeat, so it hits on the same time as the 808. And just like we did with the 808, let's go into the envelope tab and drop everything down except the hold. So now we can hold the open hi-hat out for as long as we want. It can be short like this, or you can hold it out all the way. And here's a super cool trick that I love to do. We can do slide notes on the open hi-hats as well. So if I drop a note right here, double click it, hit the slide option and hit accept, we can hear it slide down. That just made the beat so much cooler. Let's move on to the kick. And for the most part, I'm going to layer that with the 808. Add a new pattern. Let's put it right here. Keep it going. And let's use that pattern for this last section right here. I like that a lot. It's like a 4-hit right before the beat drop. And the last part I'm going to add is a crash, just to accent everything. Then at the very end, let's do a cool little stutter effect with the crash. So I'll go like this. Awesome. And the reason it stops, again, when you go into the envelope section and you turn everything down except the hold, you can control how long you want the sound to play for. And that's really cool because it mixes all the 808 as well as the snare with the kick and the crash. And that's a great way just to wrap up the drums in order for the next part of the song to hit. So altogether, here is the drill beat that we just made. So now that we have the beat done, it's time to mix it and get it all sounding amazing. So what you want to do is go into your channel rack and you want to double click this top bar right here. This will select all of your instruments. Then go into the mixer by hitting the tab right here. The piano is already routed into the mixer, but in case it's not, you want to right click. You want to go to channel routing and hit route selected channels starting from this track. And now here we have all of our instruments routed into the mixer. And it will say in the channel rack, like the piano is number 1, it's number 1 in the mixer. The 808 is number 2, it's the second slot in the mixer, and it all correlates. But yeah, so this is the mixer in FL Studio 20. Let's go over the basics. So we have our main fader right here, which controls the volume. Going above that, we have this knob right here, which controls how wide or narrow the sound is. So if you put it all the way to the right, the sound will be in mono. But if you go more to the left, it will widen it out and increase the stereo separation. Then above that, we have this larger knob right here, which is for the panning. So if you go to the right, it will pan to the right. Then to the left for the left ear. Then we have the green light right here, which controls whether the sound is on or off. So if I click that, we can turn all of the sound off. If I turn it back on, it's back on. Now let's say maybe we have all of our sounds on. And instead of turning off each and every one of these things so I can just hear the piano, you can right click on the sound that you want to solo. So I can right click on the green light. Now we soloed the piano. Maybe I only want to hear the open hi-hat. I can right click on it. Now we soloed it. And then you can add in your instruments from there just by clicking on them. And when you click on a sound in the mixer, you're able to monitor how loud it is. So let's say I want to know how loud is the 808. Let's click on the 808 and the meter right here will show you where we are. And we can read that it's somewhere around negative 5.3 dB. If we click right here, we can change the way we see the audio. And one more thing before we start mixing, you can customize each track. So if I want to change the color or the title or the icon of this slot, I can right click, hit rename color and icon. I can change the color to, let's change it to black. I can change the name to piano, and I can change the icon to a piano. So this is really helpful if you have a lot of tracks and you want to sort out where your chords are, where your keys are, where the bass is, where all the drum sounds are, which is very helpful when you have a big session and you need to be organized. So let's start out by mixing the piano. So far in our slots here, we have gross beat. And yes, these are the slots where you can add your effects. So first off, I'm going to add an EQ. I'm going to go to Fruity Parametric EQ2, which is my favorite equalizer in FL Studio. Let's make it big. And we have 7 bands here. We have sub, bass, low mid, mid, high mid, and treble. And each of these bands are fully customizable, so you can sweep them across wherever you want. You can make them as narrow or as wide, as loud or as low as you want them to be. And then on the end, you can just completely cut it off on either side, however steep you want it to be. So if we have a dark piano, there's going to be some low end in it, right? This equalizer allows you to see the frequencies. Most of the frequencies are here in the low, mid, and bass sections. And the brighter and more saturated the color of the frequency is, the louder it is. So as you can see, the brightest colors are right around here, but we still have something over here. That means we have some bass frequencies that we should be cutting out so they don't clash with the 808 and the kick. And that's why I love this equalizer, because I'm able to see where the frequencies are. So what I'm going to do is right click on this band, hit order, and choose steep 8. This is the steepest option. Or you could do the opposite, which is 2, not as steep. So let's go with steep 8, and let's just cut out these low end frequencies. I might filter out some of the highs also. And another great thing to do if you're on the go and you need to EQ quickly, FL has a built-in 3-band equalizer in every single mixer channel. So you just go to the piano, and here's our EQ. We have our low end, our mid-range, and our high end. So if you need to cut out the low end really quick, I could just go down like that, adjust how steep I want it to be, and it tells you the frequency and how loud you are. Next, let's focus on the dynamics and the compression of our sound. If I go to the dynamics section FL Studio has, I can choose Fruity Compressor. This is a great stock compressor that comes included in the program, and I'm going to use it to reduce the dynamic range of the piano. So if we had some super loud parts or some super quiet parts, it will compress it so it's more easy to listen to. So watch the meter right here. You're going to see the level jump up a tiny bit. We want to compress that down and reduce the dynamic range of that sound. So we'll be using Fruity Compressor. Let's set the ratio to 2:1. This means that for every 2 decibels that go into the compressor, only 1 decibel will be allowed out. And let's gradually set the threshold back. And you can hear what the compressor is doing. And basically what the threshold is, that's the point where when the audio passes it, that's what activates the compressor. So if our threshold is -19 dB, once the piano passes that point, the compressor will activate. So the lower we go, the quicker the compressor will activate. That's why when we push the threshold back like this, you can really hear it squashing it. But more up, it's less of an effect. And when you do compress a sound, it lowers the volume. So you want to add some of that gain back right here. After that, let's add a reverb. Go to Fruity Reverb 2, which is a great stock reverb plugin in FL. Let's see what we can do with this. We have our wet knob. I love the stereo separation knob because you can control how wide or narrow you want the reverb to be. It could be a mono like this, or wide. And Fruity Reverb 2 is great because it gives you a visual representation of the reverb that you're creating. So watch as I adjust the size of the room. It will show you what it looks like. Let's add some decay. Moving on, let's focus on the 808. So normally when I'm making drill music, I like to keep the 808 in mono. So I can do that by putting this knob all the way to the right. Then FL has probably my favorite saturation plugin for 808s. It's called Fruity Wave Shaper. And when we move this parameter up, the saturation of the 808 will increase. And that really beefs it up and makes it a stronger 808. Let's go to the kick, which I also like to have in mono. Now a trick for the kick, what I like to do is add parametric EQ2. A lot of people like to just go ahead and add low end to make the kick hit harder. I like to add high end to make its presence greater in the mix instead of just adding a bunch of low end to try to make it louder. So here's before the EQ. It's a little bit dull. Then we brighten it up by adding some high end. Moving on, let's go to our snare. Let's add an EQ. So right here, we have this frequency in the low mid area. I'm going to enhance it just to give the snare some more punch, and we'll cut out any low end over here. We can add a little bit of high end to make it more crispy. Moving on to the next snare, we'll do the same thing, add an EQ, and let's focus on the frequencies that are going to give it more punch. Right here. And I can control how narrow or wide I want the frequency to be. Cut out the lows. Add some high end. For the closed hi-hat, for this example, we don't need to be truly detailed in our EQ. We can just go right here and cut out the low end. Now for the open hi-hat, I like to get creative with it. So first, let's cut out the low end. And let's see what I can do to make it more interesting. I'm going to go to our flanger section. Let's add Fruity Chorus. This makes it a wide chorusy sound. Let's tweak the parameters first. We have delay to make it sound farther apart, or you can make it sound tighter by decreasing it. We'll put it at about 10 milliseconds for the delay and lower the mix level right here. We could also add a tiny bit of reverb to it just to give it some more release. Nothing crazy. And lastly, let's work on the crash. This time I'm going to add a flanger, lower the mix level, cut the low end. And on top of that, we can add some delay to it. That'd be interesting. Let's add Fruity Delay 3. I love this delay because it gives me so many options to controlling how I want it to sound. Let's start out with the delay model. You could have stereo. You could have ping pong going from left to right ear. And you can control that by adjusting the pan parameter right here. Then we have our time section over here if you want it to be synced to the tempo or not. Right now it is synced with 135 BPM. If we want it to be quicker, we can lower the setting. Or if we want it to take longer, we can increase the setting. I'll leave it right here. Then I'm going to head over here, add some stereo separation to the crash and the open hi-hat because we added the chorus effect on it. Now what I like to do is begin leveling all of our sounds out. I'm going to start with the piano and we'll be adjusting the faders. Because we have some panning in the snare and in the hi-hat, we can increase the stereo separation and make it even wider. Let's add some more high end to that snare. Bring in the open hi-hat. I like to pan it to the left. Let's add in the kick. And then the crash. So now let's listen to it all together. And And yeah, so that's about it for producing and mixing a drill beat in FL Studio 20 using stock plugins. I appreciate you guys coming to join me today. I hope you learned something and enjoy the rest of this online event. My name is Chambers. I'm with FL Studio 20. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.